Hey everybody, good morning. Welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo. Good morning, Casey. It was good seeing you yesterday, and good to be in the House of Devo today in the office. Then got to roll out of here and get to some chapel work. That's right, hockey season has started, so what a blessing, right? To be able to feed into the athletes here in the state of Arizona. So that's a blessing. But before we do that, we got to just get in the word ourselves. First Samuel chapter 18, part B, very cool section. Saul now realizes who David is, as far as he knows that he is the son of Jesse, and he has seen this young son of Jesse conquer in warfare against a mighty foe in Goliath of the Philistines. Saul wants this guy close to him. He knows he's becoming quite popular in the culture, and Saul is become a very jealous individual, unfortunately. And so the song on the radio back then was one of Saul has slain his thousands, but David his 10,000s. And this irritated Saul daily, tormented him. And so he very much harbored a jealousy within him towards David. Though David was his armor bearer, and David was the one who, played guitar for Saul, and we see that God, in His sovereign hand, is working out a plan, working out His will in the world, and this is something we as humans must trust. If we don't, we truly do kick against the goads. We truly fight against something that is non-winnable. And God's will stand. You can't move it aside. And that's something we have to just come to a real peace at within our heart. Is we are but mere mortals, right? And that's all we are. So Saul was very angry in verse 9 we read, right? And this refrain from the tune really galled him. And so he saw that there was only a matter of time before the popularity of David was going to supersede his and potentially the throne as well. And so it says, the next day an evil spirit from God came forcibly upon Saul. And this is something that we saw in chapter 16, verse 14 again. And it says, and he was prophesying in his house while David was playing the harp, as he usually did. And Saul had a spear in his hand, and he hurled it, saying to himself, I'll pin David to the wall, but David eluded him twice. So it's kind of interesting. Sometimes when we think of prophesying, we think of really healthy things, obviously. A very healthy form of forth-telling the Word of God. But there are examples in the Bible, for instance, in 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 29, where you see a very interesting narrative that speaks of prophesying that's not so good, just very chaotic prophesying, and so we see that the results of Saul in this state that he's in his house has resulted in what? Anger. Now, this is something that's important for me today. Is like I might, I might say a good game. I might speak of a good game in my life. I might speak of my daily devotions, or I might speak of me being in the Word, or I might speak of me doing this or doing that, or, ministering, whatever it is, just having this godly persona. But you know what? Really, where the rubber meets the road is, where is my heart? Where is it at when it comes to jealousy? Where is it when it comes to envy? Where is it when it comes to fear? Where is it when it comes to, you know, resentment? Where is my heart when it comes to bitterness towards people, unforgiveness, manipulation, things like that? That's really where the rubber meets the road, isn't it? I might say, oh yeah, I'm prophesying. Oh yeah, I'm really in the Word. But and then all of a sudden I take this spear and I chuck it at someone. then I get in my car and I go down the road and I'm cussing at people, or, I'm mad at them all the time, or I'm irritated at individuals wherever I go. I go into the market and there's a long line and I'm sitting there just totally bickering or in my mind, like, why can't they open up another line? Da 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 da. And I just constantly have this anger spirit. And so sometimes I wonder, hey, how much of my spiritual discipline is really effective, you know, and how much of it is just a bunch of whatever, you know, not really that effective at all. Well, that's something we all have to contemplate in our day, but it takes a lot of honesty to be able to look at it, because we always want to think of ourselves what better than ourselves usually, right? Or if we struggle with pride, that's certainly the case, right? As we usually think of ourselves greater. Not everybody does. Some people think of themselves so much they actually turn themselves into they get totally depressed, right? But we need to fix our eyes on Jesus. We need to be able to fix our eyes on the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ, right? Get ourselves in a sense off of us and get it looking at Jesus and saying, "Hey, Jesus, you know what? You have this day prepared for me, and let me walk in it with grace, and with the through the lens of mercy, to my fellow human beings out there." Paul or Saul we see here, yeah, he was prophesying all right in his house, yeah, but it wasn't the greatest, was it? Really, the fruit of it really didn't show that it was really a godly thing, right? Yeah, a lot of different motivations for going to church. We have a lot of different motivations for doing what we do. Is it simply just to learn more about God, to kind of enjoy His Word more, to be excited about His Word, excited about Him, learning about the Creator? Man, that's pretty awesome. So the next day, or it says Saul was afraid, right? David eluded the spear throw. Choom! And Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with David, but had left Saul. So he sent David away from him and gave him command over 1,000 men. And David led the troops to their campaigns. And everything he did, he was of great success because the Lord was with him. And Saul saw how successful he was and how afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he led them in their campaigns. So again, the popularity of David just keeps increasing, and Saul realizes that, hey, that Spirit of God that was so beautifully upon me, that one that brought the fruits of the Holy Spirit, right? What was it? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self control. Those things were gone. And that's something I want to look at every day of my life. Hey, am I walking according to the Spirit? Am I walking in that way? Um, I want to, or have I neglected, walking in the ways of the Spirit, where my life has become just a religious duty, and it really hasn't become real. Meaning there isn't that fruit of the Lord that's being seen through my life. Hey, today I want that fruit of the Lord. I want that love of Christ to work through me. And I want that excitement, that joy that is part of that. I want that self-control that's part of that. Do I have that all perfectly? Of course not, right? But boy, man, that's something I certainly want to be around and want to grow in every day of my life. Well, Saul saw that his heart was bitter. He saw that his heart was filled with envy, filled with jealousy, filled with so many things. What if David takes over the kingdom? What if this happens? What if that happens? Da 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 da. What if God rejects me? What if this? So much worry, so much concern, so many things, right? Instead of just doing the greatest thing, which is probably just sitting at the feet of the Lord, right? Just, growing in his walk with God, learning to love God. Even God's judgments are right. And and so Saul was very, very jealous of David. And in that jealousy really showed that he wasn't walking in really any fruit of the Spirit. Saul said to David, "Here's my older daughter, Merab, and I will give you to her in marriage. Only serve me bravely and fight the battles of the Lord." For Saul said to him, "I will not raise a hand against him. Let, let the Philistines do that." So he says, "Hey, I'm gonna give you my daughter." And here Saul's ways here are interesting. It's like David's already on kind of this popularity thing. It's not like Saul needed to do anything, um, other than just recognize what God was doing. But he still felt like he had to control the situation, get in there. I think maybe I overstep my bounds like this, right? At times where you kind of try to control situations that you really can't control anymore. But Saul thinks he can, so hey, here's my wife. I can use her as a bargaining chip. I can use, the military and his warfare, David's good deeds in warfare as a bargaining chip. All this stuff like that, just getting too involved, right? Yeah, and it says, "But David said to Saul, 'Who am I? And what is my family or my father's clan in Israel that I should become the king's son-in-law?'" David has this humble spirit, right? Who am I, man? Why? How can I be marrying the king's daughter? So when the time came for Merab, Saul's daughter, to be given to David, she was given in marriage to Adriel of Mahola. Interesting. So the time came. Usually there was a time period before someone got married, maybe a year or something. And it would be a way for them to know that people are walking in purity, right? Someone's not pregnant, that kind of thing. So there was usually a time before people got married, and we're not told exactly why this is the case in this situation, but we see that all of a sudden Saul pulls a fast one over on David and says, "Well, I was going to give you her, but I'm going to give her to someone else." And again, that's a sign of some weird thing going on in Saul, right? It's like pulling out stuff from underneath David. Hey, I'm going to give you this, and hey, I'm going to get on David's good side. I want to make sure that he's protecting me because I fear everything. I really don't want to go to war. I don't want to die. I don't want to face God. I don't want to face my situation. So I'm going to try to run from it. I'm going to try to manipulate things and control my life and blah, 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 blah. And we see that he just starts acting in these really irrational ways, kind of very unpredictable. It's just kind of chaotic decisions, right? Decisions that don't seem to really make much sense. They kind of seem really odd, and you know that's something we got to be careful of, right? Is what is in our heart is going to come out. It is going to flow out and show itself in our decision making, and so we gotta really as the proverb says, watch our heart, guard our heart, for out of it reveals the things of life, and so um, now Saul's daughter, uh, Michal, some people say Michelle, but it looks like Michal, was in love with David, and when they told Saul about it, he was pleased. "I will give her to him," he thought, "so that she may be a snare to him, and so that the hand of the Philistines may be against him." So Saul said to David, "Now you have a second opportunity to become my son-in-law." So again, another very tricky little sneaky thing Saul does. Saul, puts out something that seems like it's really, "Oh, I'm going to give you my daughter again. This is my other daughter." This kind of thing. And David's like, "Wow, that's awesome." He's too so stoked. But yet there's always this backdrop, part of his brain. Like he's got these other motivations going on, you know. Are you like that in your family where, you're doing something, but you really got something else in the background going on? The reason you're doing this and is not really the reason that is out in the front, right in the forefront, but you're trying to manipulate situations within the house. Hmm. Does that sound familiar a little bit? Right? Yeah. Right. And so instead of just coming off and being honest and saying what's on your mind and, sharing, instead you are moving things around. You're playing chess with the family, right? With the person. And Here we see that with Saul, right? And Saul says, "Hey, I'll give you this girl, but what is it? Oh, well, I hope she becomes a snare to him. I hope that the Philistines will be against David. Maybe David will get caught up with his spouse. He'll be dropping the ball militarily. I don't know what he's thinking. And David will get snuffed out by the Philistines. The enemies will get him, right? Because they'll be too caught up in his, sexual life or something, with his wife, and caught up with all the things of being newly married, I guess. That kind of idea. I don't know if Saul was thinking that way, but you definitely see his heart where he's thinking something, right? And he's not thinking good things about David. Again, it's like it's really an attitude of evil towards the guy. And why? Because he's a popular dude. Again, no one's listening to Saul's sermons anymore. Everybody's listening to David's messages. You know, man, he's got more clicks on the internet. He's getting more likes, more thumbs up, everything like that. And you get jealous and, oh my gosh, what about me? Well, what about me? Who am I? Right? And that's how King David looked at it. That's how David looked at it. Who am I? Right? That I shall, be, in the family of the king. Well, hey, think of you. Who are we that we should be in the family of Jesus? A part of his family, spiritually part of his family. Pretty radical. Then Saul ordered his attendants, speak to David privately and say, look, the king is pleased with you, and his attendants all like you. Now become his son-in-law. Again, manipulation. Hey, you go tell them this. But really, there's other things. Man, am I really honest, or am I doing this in my life? God, help my heart to not manipulate people like this, right? You go tell them this, but really I got this going on, right? Hmm. Yeah, but when a servant's just doing their job, right? A servant's just saying, hey, that's what the king told me to go say to David. That's what I'm going to go say to David, right? But yet the person, Saul should just go over to David himself and say, hey, David, this is what I'm thinking. I'm really jealous because of you. I see that God's hand's upon you. God's hand's not so much on me. Now remember, months ago, right? God has already made it clear to David that he is going to be king and that Saul is no longer to be king. But it's taking some time for Saul to really grasp this. And he definitely is kicking against it. And so they repeated these words to David, but David said, do you think it is a small matter to become the king's son-in-law? I am only a poor man and little known. Oh, man. So David doesn't think, he's not thinking of himself as a popular guy, though his popularity is growing quite a bit, So again, this is sometimes really a humbling chapter because it really makes us have to think about our leadership wherever we're at, in our home, in our jobs, in ministry life. Am I willing to step aside? Am I willing to see the handwriting on the wall, what God's doing? And am I willing to decrease? Or am I always having to be, the show, the highlight? Do I manipulate to keep my position intact? Big, big issues. So it says, when Saul's servants told him what David had said, Saul replied, say to David, the king wants no other price for the bride than 100 of the Philistine foreskins to take revenge on his enemies. Saul's plan was to have David fall by the hands of the Philistines. Again, manipulation, right? Hey, go do this. You'll win everything. You'll be great. That's all I really want. By the way, I really want you dead, but I'm gonna think ill towards you, but I'm gonna play it off like I'm thinking good towards you. Envy, man. Envy is rough. It not only looks at what someone has as a jealousy for what they have, but it also is seeking an ill will towards them. And so you really want their demise. And this is something that we do all the time, where we love the train wreck. We love the reality TV of all the difficulties that go on in people's life, and we tend to actually get off on it. And man, this is the crazy part of us as humans. We're not very loving. We are not a loving species in many ways. We are very fickle, and that's just a sad reality of it. Um, we can be loving at times, but boy, we certainly love train wrecks as well. And we can see someone's demise, and we can kind of get all like stoked about it. I love there's a passage in the book of Ezekiel that says God does not delight in the death of the wicked. And I like that. God does not delight in the death of the wicked, nor should I, right? Delight in the death of the wicked. Hmm. So it says, when the attendants told David these things, he was pleased to become the king's son-in-law. So before the allotted time elapsed, David and his men went out and killed 200 Philistines. He brought back the foreskins and presented the full number to the king, so that he might become the king's son-in-law. He brought twice as many as Saul had requested. Then Saul gave him his daughter Michal in marriage. And when Saul realized that the Lord was with David and that his daughter Michal loved David, Saul became still more afraid of him. And he remained his enemy the rest of his days. He just constantly, everything he did just blew up in his face. And everything that he wanted to be a hindrance for David became a blessing for David. And Saul's heart just became more bitter and bitter and bitter and bitter, right? There's always going to be things that change in life. I just need to be flexible and yielded to God for those change moments, those changing times. Saul definitely was not yielded, and he did not want things to change. He wanted them always to remain the same. And so he dug in his heels, and he allowed that anger and envy and bitterness to creep in. What could he have done different? Well, he could have just recognized the obvious, that God's hand was upon him, which he did, but then just surrender to that. Hey, that's okay. It's okay, that someone is being blessed more than I, or seems to be being blessed more than I, or someone, God's hands upon this person. It's okay. It's okay. Why wouldn't it be okay in my mind? Fear, envy, jealousy, right? Insecurities, all these things. So it's revealing my own heart, right? Where do wars come from? Do they not come from within us? The book of James says. The Philistine commanders continued to go out to battle, and often as they did, David met with more success than the rest of Saul's officers, and his name became well known. So David just becomes a person who prospers over and over and over. And sometimes just, because we're, in a sense, king's kids, sometimes we can just have, because we're close to Jesus, man, we can really prosper. And I don't mean just financially and things like that, what people look at on the here, the horizontal, but I'm talking about just spiritually. That, we can prosper in ways of having peace and serenity. And Jesus said, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives, right? We can have a peace that supersedes anything that people experience on this earth, because we're in communion with the true and living God. And we know that death has been conquered. We know that we have been brought to new heights because of our relationship with God. He brings us up to this fellowship with the deity, and how beautiful is that? Absolutely amazing, right? And so we can prosper in amazing ways. And sometimes people will look at that and they'll be maybe jealous of you, or jealous of your brothers and sisters in Christ. Oh, things are always going good for them. No, it's not that things always go good for us. It's just we're maybe thinking about things through the lens of Jesus. We're thinking that, hey, God's got a plan, God's got a purpose, He's got hope for me. And so people might look at that or hear us talk that way and think that, oh, everything's going great for them. But it's not the case. It's not that everything is going great. There's a lot of circumstances that aren't good. But it's just our perspectives are different, right? And David's got the right perspective, right? He's focused on the Lord. And Saul, he's just focused on the here and now. He's focused on self. Boy. Casey says playing chess in a situation. Love that. Heart, mind check. Yeah, absolutely. So really cool to see the behaviors of Saul and the behaviors of David. And you get kind of a humble heart here from David. You know, hey, who am I? You get that a couple times, and you get Saul recognizing God's work in David, but not willing to yield and surrender to what God's doing and admitting it and moving joyfully in that direction. Instead, he's just trying to protect self. And man, protecting self with ourself is never going to be a good thing. So, yeah, so good Devo. God, help me with my security issues, please, and help me with those insecurity issues, right? Yeah, amen. So, hey, you guys have a great day. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.